Welcome to another edition of Webchat with the Warden. I'm Shelby Knox, and I'm joined by Warden Mayberry. How are you today, sir?
Great. It's another beautiful spring day in Oxford County.
It is. It's a really nice spring day. Good for some spring weather. So you've got a busy council coming up, again, as per usual. So you've got some new guidelines for OMAFRA. What is that exactly?
Okay. For the provinces, through their provincial policy statement, has set out guidelines for development in agricultural land. And so the county staff have looked at it, and as have most of the municipalities looked at it, and said these are our comments that they want considered. They want the province to consider when they're bringing out their final guidelines. So there's really two major ones. One is the minimum distance separation, the distance that farm operations or other businesses have to stay from residential areas. And for the most part, the county staff and I think most of the municipalities are relatively happy with that. In the sort of what you can do on particular land use, the county wants clearer understanding on what it means by sort of on-farm diversified uses, and so there's a few questions in there that they want clarification from the lower tier municipalities, particularly the rural municipalities. I think the big question is, how do we keep people in the rural areas in a way that doesn't jeopardize the operations of farms, and how can we encourage incentives and investment in the rural areas without sort of forcing everybody to go to the large urban areas, and so to try and sustain the livelihoods of rural communities.
Okay, so this wouldn't affect zoning whatsoever?
Well, it might eventually affect how the zoning rules look, but for right now we're still at the provinces trying to work their way through what actually should the provincial policy statements look like, and what should be the guidelines to help lower tiers and one-tier governments to put those policies into place.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now that you've explained it to me.
No, it doesn't. But.
It does. So for the, you've also got the 2014 Audited Financial Statements coming up.
Yes, as every municipality, the county has to do an audited financial statement, and so the auditor has brought forward a report. It's a report that the initial outlook looks good. It says that the county had a surplus of about $970,000 last year. That sounds like a lot of money until you realize that the county budget is somewhere around $200 million, and so that's less than 0.5%, which means that the estimate of how much something was going to cost and what it actually ended up costing us, you got to say the staff has done an excellent job in being able to project what we should put on the tax base. The other side of that story is that when you have to look very carefully at what that $970,000 was, and so when you look more closely, you see, well, we were over in some areas, we were under in other areas, and but for the most part, we accomplished most of the programs that we wanted to do. And so, again, I think staff have done an excellent job. There's a few things that we don't have done, and that maybe accounts for some of the money as well. The third part about the audited statement is that the auditor gives you kind of an indication of how you're doing overall in sort of in a period of years, looking back and sort of saying, what direction are we going? And that's actually the best news. Of the 970,000 is great, but the best news is that the auditor is saying we're doing really well. We're on a strong financial footing. The county is in good shape to take care of its obligations, and that we're moving forward at a reasonable rate of replacing infrastructure. So, all in all, I'm very pleased with the auditor's report.
Good news all around. Is there any plans for that surplus, or where it'll be diverted to?
All surpluses end up going back into the general revenues to offset the taxes for the next year.
Okay, sounds great. We've also got a few housing issues coming up at council. Could you speak a little on that? Sure.
There's actually three issues, but the first two are around replacing housing stock or expanding housing stock for social housing, and so in InterKIP we have a group that has currently we have a contract with them to provide housing, and they have said they'd like to expand and provide another 16 units. For 2-bedroom units and 12 single-bedroom units, and so the county is approving or is being asked to approve a little over $600,000 to help build that facility so that it'll be there for the long term. So that's one. In Tillsonburg, slightly different situation. The Tillsonburg nonprofit group is saying, can we remortgage one property so that we can build on another? And they really have to ask permission of the county to do that. And so the county, the recommendation is that yes, definitely. And they'll build another 12 social housing units in Tillsonburg. In both cases, it's land that they already own. And so it's relatively inexpensive to expand the facilities and to provide more housing, which we know. The other issue around social housing that's coming up for council is what is being called the Housing First policy, which would mean that when the county disposes of surplus land, that they would look, first of all, should we try and provide housing there, or should we sell that land and use the money, or whatever the asset is, sell that and use the money to provide or to reinvest in social housing. So you take one asset that you dispose of, and you create a new asset for the future of the community. So it's a very good policy, and I'm looking forward to seeing how council will handle it.
And very much needed in this area.
Very much needed. We're certainly short of social housing for the county.
Great. Well, that's good news for the upcoming. And you also have a sewer and financing, correct? Sewer and water.
There's part of the ongoing process of providing sewers and water and that for service communities is that there's always either constant additions or constant upgrades. And so there's a few dollars in the budget, or in the budget for doing this, and we're approving a number of projects. Some of them very small, simply hooking up single houses, and some of them are larger, sort of completing a street. So as always, that's sort of typical work in the county, and glad to see that Public Works are staying on top of it.
And that will take some of the burden, this financing, off of homeowners, correct?
Well, there is, for new hookups, when we hook up a new resident to the system, there's a cap at how much they can pay, and there's a portion of that is granted back. And so about 25% of the whole cost is granted back, and then there's also a cap. If people are having difficulty paying for their hookups,